Last episode, we went back 14,000 years to a limestone cave in Somerset, and we found something that should have been shattered a myth, but didn't, because the myth hadn't been invented yet. We found that prehistoric Europeans were cannibals, documented, forensically confirmed, skull cups, butchered bones, ritual consumption of the dead, not monsters, people, white people ancestors doing something that was, for them, culturally meaningful. We also looked at how ancient Greece and Rome used cannibalism not as something they practiced, but as something they accused others of. The the androphagy, the blood libel against early Christians, cannibal as the ultimate other. That pattern, accusing someone else of the thing yourself is doing or have done, is the thread we're pulling on today. And it leads us to 1492. It leads us to a word. Hi, I'm Bill.
And I'm Verna. Bill. Bill,
Huh?
what are you wearing?
I'm in character.
Okay, so we in 1492. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, this is how we got to do it. We got to, make sure that, we go all out for this. Oh,
Yes.
and just in case, Yep.
Okay, Columbus,
Uh-huh.
let's go. We
We're
lock it.
ready. All right, so let's talk about this motherfucker.
Okay.
Now, in October 1492, Christopher Columbus is sailing through the Caribbean, right?
hmm
He's already discovered, and I'm using that word loosely as possible, but he supposedly discovered islands populated by the Taino people. He has described them in his journals as gentle, generous, and ripe for a conversation for Christianity. The Queen Columbus has a problem.
Right. So I do know that mofo does need gold. He needs spices. He needs something to bring back to the Spanish crown to justify the entire expedition. Because what he is finding is increasingly that the Caribbean is not a shortcut to Asia as he has promised, but it is something else entirely. And then he does see an opportunity.
Well, the Taino people tell Columbus about their neighbors, a group called the Carib. Columbus writes this down. And then, Queen, with extraordinary speed, he makes a decision that will echo through centuries. He decides that the Carib are cannibals. He decides crucially that this makes it fair game for enslavement. And then he takes the word that he heard, Carib, or in his rendering, cannib, and turns it into something new, cannibal, a word that had never existed before, a word that one man invented in one moment to justify what he was about to do. Welcome back to the blueprint, where in this season we are diving deep into white culture where Queen.
They ate people, y'all.
That's my favorite part.
Yes, it surely is.
So, anytime we go into this, it's always good to go on the back end, the history. So let's
Right.
talk about the invention of cannibal. Let's be very precise about what Columbus did, because it is one of the most consequential acts of wordcraft in human history. The word cannibal comes from cannib. Columbus rendering of Carib, the name of Tiano, used for neighboring island people. Columbus heard the word, misheard, or modified it. And in his journey entry of November 23rd, 1492, wrote that he was searching for people who ate human flesh, whom he called cannibals. Now, did the Kara people practice cannibalism? This is generally contested by historians. There is some evidence of ritual cannibalism, the consumption of small amounts of enemy's flesh as part of warfare ritual, which was not uncommon globally. But the wholesale predatory flesh eating that Columbus described, almost certainly fabricated or wildly exaggerated, drawing on Taino people, accounts that made themselves have been misunderstood.
Okay.
Peter Humley, one of the foremost scholars of colonial cannibalism, argues that in his essential book, Colonial Encounters, that Caribbean cannibalism is essentially a colonial invention, a story Europeans needed to tell, not a practice that they actually witnessed. But here is what makes this so devastatingly important, Queen. In 1503, Queen Isabella, not new Queen, Queen Isabella of Spain issued a decree. It stated that indigenous people of the Americas could be enslaved, enslaved if they were
Wow.
cannibals. If they ate human flesh, resist Christianity, or practice sodomy, they fell outside of the protections of that Spanish law technically extended to native peoples.
You said sodomy?
Wait, what else?
You said it right. Sodomy. I mean,
Oh,
today a lot of people be enslaved. I'm just saying.
oh.
I
But
mean,
do you
not practicing
see?
Christianity. You know what
Right,
that is.
right.
She would not like pride. Continue.
Yeah, but do you see what that means?
Yeah, it's horrific.
Like,
Because you just said that they've never actually seen it with their eyes. I just don't
right.
understand why they throwing in sodomy in there. What the hell that got to do with them eating people? I mean, they eating booty. Okay, continue.
I mean, hey, ain't much change shit from
I
then
mean,
to
they
now.
technically was eating people.
Okay. Whew.
Anywho,
But yeah, so the word cannibal was not just an insult. It
mm,
was like a legal category. It was the mechanism by which entire populations could be stripped of humanity, their land, their freedom, and their lives. And it was entirely within power of the Spanish colonizers to decide who qualified.
okay.
Unsurprisingly, the list of people deemed cannibals expanded rapidly wherever the Spanish wanted to enslave or destroy a population. So they
Wow.
literally just like used it as a weapon. Um, One of the most effective they ever invented.
Right. Which they don't
So,
claim.
right.
Okay. Another invention that they just don't claim that worked, but all right, I
Hmm.
digress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you always ask, what has white people
Uh,
invented that actually
like
works? So,
systematic oppression
yeah.
continued.
All right, people don't. So, what did the Europeans like? What were they doing? Right.
Right.
White Columbus is in Caribbean inventing cannibals, and the Spanish and the Portuguese colonizers are branding entire people as flesh eaters to justify their enslavement. So let's look into what was happening back in Europe. Matter of fact, let's look at what Europe was eating. I want to introduce you to a practice that was almost completely erased from Western historical consciousness. Scholars call it corpse medicine, and it was for roughly 300 years completely mainstream in European medical or medical practice. My apologies. From approximately the 15th century through the late 18th, and in some cases beyond, European physicians prescribed and European patients consumed human remains as medicine.
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It just
And
seems redundant, but all right.
yeah, Queen, do you have your skull?
Do I need to go get it?
I think you need to go get it.
Okay,
Yeah, you're gonna like this part.
I'll be right back. 1 second.
Okay. Y'all, she's gonna go get this skull because I told you we all in this, right? Is this how he was looking for the indigenous people? He's a horrible guy. Yeah, we don't celebrate this guy around these parts. Okay,
Okay.
great. She has her skull.
Okay.
Brace yourself. Human skulls were grounded into powder and dissolved into liquid, prescribed for epilepsy and headaches. Human blood, drunk flesh, or dried and powdered. Prescribed for epilepsy, um, hemorrhaging, and general tonic. Human fat, also prescribed for various elements or
You mean like ailments?
ailments. Yeah.
Okay, I know that
Not
in the
elements. That
Midwest,
would be right.
pronunciation's hard for you. I think you mean ailments, not
Yeah,
elements.
let's go with
Like,
ailments. Yeah. And you knew I was gonna struggle with that. You knew I was gonna struggle
yeah,
with that.
ailments is what he means because in California we pronounce every single syllable, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, in Chicago we like to skip over a few.
So
Um,
this skull must have healed so many people.
yes, it was a lifesaver, Queen. It was definitely
Disgusting.
essential to what we
I'll just
have.
keep.
Yeah,
We should
keep it
name
right
him.
there.
Okay.
We need that.
Or her. Or they. I don't want to misgender.
This
Okay.
was not a French or a taboo practice.
Okay.
This was not back alley bullshit. This was documented in the works of respected physicians. It was sold in pharmacies. It was consumed by aristocrats and monarchs.
Okay.
Got you.
Ew. Disgusting.
King Charles II of England, the so called Merry Monarch, who ruled from 1660 to 1685, reportedly took what was known as the King's Drops on a regular basis. The King Drops were a tincture made for a human skull. The same King Charles II who presided over a court that considered itself a pinnacle of European civilization. This motherfucker was drinking skull powder. Now, Richard Snug, a scholar at Durham University,
Oh,
has written, huh?
I'm just saying, wow,
Yeah,
I just need to take a moment to take that in.
yeah,
Okay, continue. These people are
yeah.
twisted. All right, okay.
So this scholar at Durham University written a definitive book on this subject. Mummies, cannibals, and vampires. His research reveals the full scale of European corpse medicine, including one of the most extraordinary expressions, the trade in Egyptian mummies. From the medieval period onward, grounded up Egyptian mummy was the most prized medicines in Europe. Pharmacies across the continent stocked it. Physicians prescribed it. The demand was so enormous, Queen, that uh, when the genuine supply of the ancient Egyptian mummies began to run low,
Hmm.
dealers started manufacturing fake ones,
Mm.
wrapping fresh corpses in line and burying them briefly in a desert sand to simulate the appearance of the of um
Like
of the
mummification.
yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So they were consuming mummies so much that they lost out on their product that they were like, yo, we finna just take these fresh corpses and just like make it look like it's mummies. So like they started making crack.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a
Just checking.
great way of
I
saying
Yeah,
yeah.
they started making crack.
That's
They're like, let's cook it on the stove so we can stretch our product. We're gonna start making crack now.
good
All
way of
right.
thinking about that.
I mean,
Great
hey,
way.
I gotta relate to the people.
Making crack.
Epidemic. It was a
They were
mummy
making
crack
crack.
epidemic. All right. Okay. Interesting.
So, in other words, the demand for human remains to eat was so high that people were being killed and processed to meet the need because, capitalism.
Oh, capitalism. Right. Perfect.
Um, and yet, the exact same historical moment, European colonizers,
Mhm.
the ancestors of whites, were sailing to other parts of the world and calling the people they found there cannibals. The
Yeah.
hypocrisy is not incidental, it is structured and diabolical as fuck.
Yeah, like as you were telling that, I forgot like this is at the same moment that they are going after care of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's happening at the same time when they should have probably been enslaving the European people because that's what they were actually doing. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess
Yeah.
I guess to them it was okay to eat people after they were unalived. All right. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
keep
it
going.
gets it gets better.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring you a little bit closer to home.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Jamestown, Virginia, 1609,
Hmm.
the first permanent English settlement, which we've talked about this before, located
Okay.
in North America, is in crisis. The harvest has failed because these motherfuckers don't know how to farm. Relations with the Powhatan
Hmm.
Confederacy have collapsed. Disease has swept through the settlement, and the winter is coming. That sounds familiar. Shout out to Jon Snow, by the way. But seriously, what follows is known as starving time. Of approximately 500 colonists who entered the winter of 1609, only 60 survived to see the spring of 1610. The death rate was catastrophic. And among the desperate, starving survivors, something happened that colonial authorities, white people, would spend centuries trying to suppress. Queen, they ate each other.
Mm. Shocking.
Contemporary accounts hinted at it. A man named George Percy wrote wrote vaguely of settlers digging up corpses and consuming them. One colonist was reported executed after killing and eating his wife. But for the most part, the historic record was quiet on the specifics. So it's really hard to really dig into it. Then in 2012, archaeologists excavating at the Jamestown site made a discovery that broke the silence definitely. In a sailor among desecrated food remains, they found the skull and shin bone of a 14-year-old girl. The bones bore a knife, marks consistent with butchering. The flesh had been systematically removed. The skull had been struck repeatedly, probably to extract the brain. The bones show signs of having to been cooked. Yes, they cooked it. The Smithsonian Institution named her Jane. We don't know her name. She was probably an English settler who died during the starving time and then was consumed by her fellow colonists. Or at least that's the story we assume. Who knows if she was dead before cooked or before she chosen to be cooked. These are the same colonists or their near contemporaries who were writing back to England about the savage, ungodly practices of the native people that were displacing. The same tradition of settlers who would go on to use allegations of cannibalism to justify the destruction of indigenous communities across the continent.
Mm.
Jane was 14 years old, and the people who ate her called themselves civilized. Those same people are here in America. We just rub elbows with their descendants now.
Oh,
So I want to talk about fear. Specifically, I want to talk about fear that's been largely written out of the mainstream history of the transatlantic slave trade. A fear that enslaved African people carry with them onto ships. A fear that scholars like Marcus Wood in his book Blind Memory have worked to restore historic record. Many enslaved Africans believed that white Europeans were cannibals, that they were being taken across oceans to be eaten. This was often dismissed by historians as superstitions, as a misunderstanding born of a culture difference and fear of the unknown. So basically, they thought that niggas was ignorant and they just
yeah.
didn't know.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like just hearing about Jane, this is very unsettling. And then thinking about how they wanted to turn around and say that indigenous people were the cannibals when they literally like ate
Yeah,
each other. You said it was 500 people and only 60 survived. And one of them that they cooked was a 14-year-old girl. And we have to think that she was unalive first when we have evidence that a man um killed his wife to eat her. I don't know. I doubt that she was dead first, but
too.
you know, I it's just disgusting. But obviously enslaved African people, their suspicion was pretty spot on, but go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, they historians say that they was in the fear of the unknown. But I want to suggest the following scholars who have thought most carefully about this thought it was something else. It was rational. It was a rational hypothesis from available evidence.
Mhm.
Think about what enslaved people actually observed. They watched their captures, white people, behave with extraordinary violence. They saw people around them branded, beaten, and killed. They watched the sugar that enslaved people were forced to produce get loaded onto ships and sailed into Europe. They knew in the abstract that their bodies, their labor, their lives were being consumed by a system that threatened them as raw material.
Mhm. Yeah.
They knew about corpse medicine. In some West and Central African communities, there were existing frameworks for understanding the consumption of human remains by powerful white people as an act of spiritual and physical predation. When they looked at white people, what they were doing, the slave trade, the plantations, the medical practices, the category of cannibal fit with a horrific logical precision.
Yeah.
The the Igbo people of what is now Nigeria had a specific tradition of resistance to the slave trade rooted in this belief. If you were taken by white cannibals, death was preferable to enslavement. This was one of the interpretations scholar have offered of the Igbo landing. The 1803 mass suicide of enslaved Igbo people in coastal Georgia who drowned themselves whether to comply to captivity. Now, that is the first time I have ever heard of someone purposely drowning themselves.
Right.
The desperation had to be great.
Right.
They essentially chose death over being consumed.
Right. I mean, I I'm kind of speechless by it, but I it's kind of like oddly like poetic. It's terrible. I mean, they would rather like all die and then to allow their
Hmm.
bodies to be used and consumed, either literally or even by a system.
Mm-hmm.
and which consumes us every single day. So, um, yeah, I don't think I ever actually, I think I remember vaguely hearing about this, but this is the first time I've heard it in detail.
Marcus Wood writes, and I'm paraphrasing here, that enslaved people believe and white cannibalism should not be seen as evidence of their ignorance. It should be seen as evidence of their insight. They understood, metaphorically and sometimes literally, that a system had been built to devour them. The slave trade was cannibalism, not literally, but structurally. It was a system designed to consume human beings for profit, to transfer people into product. And the people running that system called themselves civilized, as I say again, called themselves Christian, called others savages, called others cannibals. Not everyone in European tradition was blind to this contradiction. In 1580, right in the middle of colonial era, as Spain and Portugal are dismantling entire civilizations in the Americas, a French philosopher named Michel Geronte published.
Jamonte.
Mm-hmm. I think he had a little black in him.
Okay, period.
But he had published an essay called "Of Cannibals." Monte had spoken with Brazilian indigenous people who had been brought to France. He had listened to their accounts of their own culture, including, yes, their practice of consuming the flesh of defeated enemies in ritual warfare. He had thought that was, for his time, almost shockingly radical. He wrote, in essence, that he found nothing barbarous or savage in these people's nation, except that everyone calls barbarous that which is not customary to them. He then listed what he considered the actual barbarism of European civilization, the torture of heretics, the burning of people alive, the tearing apart of bodies for public entertainment, and that concluded, by honest measure, Europeans were the greater savages. He was writing in 1580, 140 odd years ago. The argument hasn't changed. We just keep not listening to it.
Right. It's disgusting. Especially when you said, I think you said like tearing bodies apart for entertainment.
Entertainment. That's why I emphasize that.
That's not, I'm
Entertainment.
like grossed out by it, thinking about it. I like, I can't even, I can't even watch those types of scenes in like horror movies. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
watch a horror movie, but like I don't find entertainment in like overly graphic
Me either.
like realistic gruesome things like that
I agree.
personally. And listen, if anybody gets offended by this, I do find it a little odd, people who find like a lot of like excitement in watching like, oh, this is so realistic to me. I'm like, that's weird. But I mean, do you? But maybe if you like it, you might be what. And that's a part of your culture. Just
Mm-hmm.
saying. All right. Anywho, go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
Bill.
So I want to leave you with a single image, even though I know I left you with several images, but
Hmm.
so a pharmacy in the 17th century London, glass jars on wooden shelves, a physician in a long dark coat, consulting a leather-bound volume, a wealthy patient, perhaps a lord, perhaps a bishop, holding a coin. One of these shelves, ground human skull, human blood dried to a powder, rendered human fat into a small ceramic pot, mummy human flesh imported from Egypt via merchants who may or may have not checked where it actually all from. Queen, this is civilized Europe. This is this is the culture. The exact moment sailing to Africa, to the Americas, and branding the people it finds there as savage cannibals who must be enslaved or destroyed for their own good. This is the culture whose descendants, white people culture, still carries assumption buried somewhere deep in its foundations that Western civilization is the standard against which all others measured. The skull powder was ground right here.
Well, all right. So, next episode, we move into the 19th century, the Victorian era, the age of empire, and its most confident and most brutal. And we're going to look at two things simultaneously. First, a series of catastrophic survival situations, shipwrecks, Arctic expeditions, frontier disasters, in which white people ate each other. And they did it repeatedly. And the evidence was documented, tried in courts, and then, of course, quietly buried. The second, forensic dismantling of one of Victorian era's greatest cover-ups, the Franklin expedition. 129 men, the Arctic ice, and the Inuit witnesses whose testimony was dismissed for over a century because the Navy couldn't bear what implied. I'm Verna.
And I'm Bill. This has been the Blueprint Season 2. They ate people, y'all. Episode 2. The Cannibal Accusation. The bones don't lie, y'all. They never do. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.